Okay, now I'm going to attempt to finish this off. And to do that, I'm just going to fine tune some of my selections, erase away from certain things. I like to have my history showing there at the top, so if I make a mistake, I can see how I can easily fix it. Command Z takes you one step in your history. Shift Command Z will take you several steps up. You can just keep going. You'll see these little floating patches every once in a while, little things that need work. And so finishing off each element just means cleaning up all of the weird debris. Usually means slightly smaller brushes, sometimes slightly harder brushes. Sometimes even erasing at a slightly lower opacity. So it's not all or nothing. Yeah, so let me take my eraser down to about 80, even a little bit smaller. Show some of this. And the trick is knowing what layer you're erasing from. So I still like to use that auto select, kind of find edges as I go. And the light logic would tell us that things get a little bit less colorful and a little bit darker as they recede into the distance. So those are things to keep in mind as you're deciding which edges to keep and which ones to fade back. Also, edges get softer in the distance. Now this kind of effect is really common. This kind of glowing we have, I erased it a little bit too far. And that's where the clone stamp could be really helpful. Again, super soft edged. We don't want to give anything away. And a fairly low opacity. I'm going to target the sky here and kind of paint it back in. Transition it. So I don't mind that. It kind of feels like clouds coming over the top. So I just need to pick something subtle, kind of make this look more natural and less like a halo. All right. Forgot about my plume. Let's see. How do I want that incorporated? That's a good question. Not at the moment. And the key to getting these blends to look natural is just finding kind of natural dividers, like the edges of rocks, places that are less obvious, and erasing at a low opacity now it helps to make those colors kind of work together in transition as well. And the only thing I'm really trying to get rid of are any kind of hard cut edges that look artificial or not really well thought out. And sometimes you'll have to do that with the clone stamp, by just softening edges. Get on the right layer here. So there's a lot of artistry and technique to this kind of finishing, figuring out what you want and what you can get away without doing. And usually the simplest solution is always the best. I might even take some from clone stamping from these rocks up here with the whales. And I just noticed there's a penguin in my background I didn't know about. I'm going to get rid of him. Can't abide penguins in my landscape. There we go. So a lot of just very soft touches. That's what's going to make it all work together. Now, how do you get rid of something like a penguin? A few penguins here. Now Photoshop has some nice tools. They used to have what are called healing brushes or spot brushes. Now they have content aware. So if I'm on the right layer with that penguin there, I can simply select around him and say edit fill, and instead of filling him with a color, I say content aware, and that's asking Photoshop to sample everything outside and try to fill in the pattern in a believable way. And you know what? It works pretty darn well. You get a little copy-pasty feeling every once in a while, like that impression on the rock is a little too identical, so what do? I use the clone stamp. I target some rock texture, and I just vary just enough so it doesn't look that way. Now, how do I get rid of the other penguins? Same way. So select around them, edit, fill, content aware 100%. Then I can also, of course, use my soft eraser, kind of blend it in with other layers. I don't know if anyone would even read this shape as a penguin, but having seen the others, I know what it is. And actually, my brother-in-law was the roommate at Harvard with the guy that came up with this algorithm about 3 years ago, or no, 4 years ago, for content aware for Photoshop. And just that one algorithm has helped him do quite well for himself. It's obviously made a big difference in photo processing. And even though we're doing such big images, when you get close enough, they're still just low resolution images. And so we don't need to worry about too much detail. I mean, I'm getting incredibly picky now with little things on the rocks. And so it's always nice every once in a while to hit Command-O and just look at the big picture, fit everything on the screen and realize what battles are worth fighting. And to me, the biggest problem with digital art, the biggest challenge of it, beyond other disciplines, is just knowing when to stop, because you can just keep going and improving things forever. So that's why I try to think of these projects in steps. And this step, I'm just trying to blend edges and get everything to work. The next step is going to be dodging and burning, adding shadows where I need them, helping things separate. And I'm almost ready to show you that. All right. So this is all working pretty well. The lighting and the coloring seems to work, but certain things feel like they should stand out more. I feel like I'm going to go ahead and save it. I feel like I need a little bit more shading behind the whale bones here so they stand out. I feel like it could be a little bit darker behind these rocks here so that space stands out. So what we're going to do now is what's called dodging and burning, which is selectively darkening and lightening the different layers. And I do that with these tools. It looks like a little black lollipop, or I guess a white lollipop now in this version. That's the dodge tool. And the dodge tool will lighten your layer, so it's specific to each layer. I like to do an exposure that's less than 30, because it's a pretty strong tool. And I always do it on midtones first with a fairly large soft brush. Okay, so let's look at what this does to the whale. First, I want to brighten up the whale bones a little. So I'm just going to hit them gently in a targeted way, and it just enhances the pixels that are already there. It's not painting, it's just changing the exposure levels on those pixels. And because I'm using dodge, it's brightening them. And because these whale bones are in the foreground, that helps a lot. And then I want to deepen the shadows behind them, so it separates, especially here with the background. And so what I'm going to do is change to the burn tool directly under dodge. Same thing, keep it at an exposure level of less than 30, because it's a very powerful tool. Now on the midtones, I'm just going to darken them right at the edges of the bones. It's very subtle. It's easy to overdo, but it will help separate those elements. Now the last tool, if you think something has a little bit too much color, like this dirt maybe has a little bit too much color in some places, is the sponge tool. And the sponge can be set to either add intensity of color with saturate or to take it away with desaturate. So I'm going to keep it at desaturate. Take it to about something under 30, pretty large, soft edged. I'm going to hit the browns a little bit. And I'm going to dodge them a little bit too. Just because they're right on the edge of that ice. Feels like they could be a little brighter. Again, it's a little too easy to overdo it, so be careful. But the foreground should be a little bit brighter. It should get a little bit darker as you go into the background. It should be a little bit more colorful in the foreground, a little less colorful in the background. In general, this is how you're going to move it. I've got hundreds of little penguins back there. I'm just going to let those go. But I will use dodge and burn. Burn in this case to make that back row, whoops, quite a bit darker. Now the reason Dodge looks like a lot